64 is 64, celebrated yesterday. And while we're still beaming in all that glory, all that excitement, some might not be so excited. The reality is that we must continue talking about Nigeria. Indeed, if we must understand the journey ahead, we must understand the journey before now. With us in the studio is one who will do this conversation and lots more. The man on your screen is the founder, Nigeria's foremost environmental non-governmental organization, Fight Against Desert Encroachment, FADE. Chairman, Nelson Mandela Gardens, a conservation resort in Asaba. One-time managing director and chief executive officer of Castaigne, West Africa PLC. Founder, Didi Museum, Nigeria's first private museum. An author of many books, a columnist with the Sun newspaper, popularly referred to as the Desert Warrior for his daring multiple crossing of the desert. He is no one else but Dr. Newton JIBUNOH. It's good to be with you this morning on the morning ride.
Thank you for having me.
I'm privileged.
Good morning, Doctor.
Thank you very much for
Welcome.
Before we even proceed, talk about Nigeria at 64. You are older than Nigeria, sir. And the country should...
a lot older. Because I was in my early 20s when we saw that wonderful morning of 1st October 1960. It's something that every time I remember, it sends me back to some wonderful feelings about our nation.
Yeah.
I was at the race course, now known as the Tafawa Balewa Square,
Yes.
in Lagos, the night the Union Jack was lowered and the white-green Nigerian flag was hoisted. It was an emotional event that stayed with me for a very, very long time. And most of what shaped my life today started from that moment, because it exhibited hope of a nation that was emerging, hope of a nation that was now going to take care of itself, hope of a nation that was, marching along with some other developing countries that were coming along at that time. So when I look back and I see that a lot of that has been dashed, I begin to wonder where, especially if we are to talk about the future, I begin to wonder about the future.
Okay. You've already explained this nostalgia and you've explained everything for me right now. Well, I want to get how you really felt back then. 1960,
Yes.
October 1. What would you have envisioned Nigeria like 64 years after?
Well, an emerging nation. I was looking for an emerging nation. One of the reasons why I rushed back from UK after my studies was because I wanted to be part of that emerging nation. I had jobs all over.
Yes.
And because the kind of 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan that were made available to at least some of us who were then subsequently abroad,
Yes.
was such that there was so much that was going to be happening in Nigeria. Then, of course, we had what I would call the lower class, the middle class, and the upper class. Today, I think the middle class has been cleaned out of the system completely. It's either you are a lower class or you are upper class. That's the hope I talked about, because if and when you find yourself in that lower level of development, you want to get to the middle class. And from the middle class, you can then move on to, even if you don't get to the upper class segment, the hope was there. And so I think one may need to have to reset the whole structure once again, because it was there then. And so the Nigeria we hoped for then, that the British, they were leaving, and we were going to gradually take over, manage it our own way, direct it our own way, make the plans that will be passed on to the future generation and the rest of it.
Okay.
All that is no longer there. And if you ask me how to reset it now, I'll have a serious problem, because we have missed the roads. That road that we traveled on, I think we have.
Okay. There must be something positive about independence that we got in 1960. What are some of the significant changes you observed in Nigeria since independence, both positive and negative?
Well, when the government of Tafawa Balewa started, plans were made to launch Nigeria into an industrialized nation, just the way most of the other countries, I can mention a few, started.
Yes.
Look at the Dubai we go to today. There was no Dubai at that time. Most of the Gulf countries, most of the Asian countries, they were almost in the same category as we were. Nigeria followed suit by planning for, or made plans for, car assembly plants that were to be built in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. Paper mills, also 6 to be built around the whole country.
Yeah.
The rolling mills, also 6 in the 6 geopolitical. And then, of course, I can't remember the 4th or 5th one.
Okay.
So most of these industries were meant to launch the nation. And in fact, it was as a result of that industrialization that Nigeria started building polytechnics and colleges of technologies all over the country, because we were lacking in the manpower
Yes.
to feed those major industries. Steel mill, car assembly plants, it was planned in such a way that 15 years after the launch of the car assembly plant, Nigeria would start making their own cars. The same with the steel mill. The same with the paper mills. But now you have a situation where thousands of polytechnics have been built. Thousands of colleges of technology have been built. Universities are all over the place. That now they are graduating, or they have started graduating some time ago. Where are the industries? That's where the problem is coming from. The industries are no more. So that's why I use the word reset. We need to really sit back and reset the countries going forward.
Okay. But since 1960, have we gotten anything right in the country? Is that something positive we should celebrate as we clock 64 years today?
Yeah, we may have built more than 64 multi-billionaires.
That's sarcasm to speak. Now, looking at all these things you've said, you've really mentioned how the dream was so bright back then when it started. And if we want to make the future better, we must go back into the past and see what we can really look at and make adjustments for ourselves in the present. Where did it start going wrongly in Nigeria? The dream was nice. Tafawa Balewa had a great plan. In fact, I've read some of those articles, some of these things, and I had my mouth agape. I was just wondering the kind of brains. And I understand what you said. Many nationalists came all the way from the UK from the US, they returned to Nigeria. You're one of them. And they wanted to build their country. They wanted to make their country great. In reverse now, it's people that live in Nigeria making the other countries greater. But let's find out, where did it go wrong in Nigeria? Can you trace that?
If you clean out the middle class from the system, then you bring in corruption. You bring in lack of accountability. If we can get back, starting with accountability, then maybe we can begin to look at the whole resetting once again. Those plans I talked about, they're still there. The infrastructures for the paper mill, the infrastructures for the steel rolling mill, they're still there. So why don't we go back, first of all, and find out where did we go wrong, and begin to correct things from there. Look at Nigeria Airways, for instance. It was the flagship of the continent of Africa. 28 planes we started with. Where are those planes today? We have not asked questions about, so we must begin to ask questions. That's where accountability comes in.
Now, when you returned to Nigeria, when you celebrated Nigeria, when Nigeria was one, by the way, it looked like Nigeria was united. The north, the south, the north, the west, the east, they were all united.
We started dividing it. We started dividing the country.
I'm trying, because I'm just trying to understand history. You sit down here, you are 86, you'll be 87 January 1. That's what you said before we came on set.
That's right, yeah.
So this is an opportunity to grab all the knowledge, all the information, all the wisdom, all the history that we can grab right here. I'm blessed that I can live with those and enjoy this program. But then, we were united at some point. When did we start to be divided in Nigeria? Can you trace that again?
Well, I know people are not going to like the statement I will make now, and I think the creation of states contributed immensely to our problem today.
Oh, no, like
Creation of states.
Yes.
How did it
You see,
contribute
you're
to
talking about dividing. Look at where the country was just 4 regions in the country. We were just 4 regions. And we've gone from 4 to 30 what?
36.
36.
That's the FCT.
Yes. Today, in less than 64 years, that's not right. You don't plan a state overnight. You don't structure the division overnight. That was where the whole thing started from. I mean, I know we are all benefiting from state creation because we said that would mean taking development to the people. You can take development to the people through local government structures, through traditional institutions, like it was. So I think the creation of states contributed immensely to the kind of disunity. Because I talked about Nigeria. I worked and lived in every part of this country. I'm sure our discussion will dive into that.
Yes.
I built hospitals in Maiduguri and Sokoto. I built structures in Abuja. I built Wall of Tree program for my environmental sustainability in Kano. And I'm talking of working and living there. I'm well established in Lagos. I built a museum there. One of the tallest buildings in Nigeria today, the Net building, 35 stories. I was the project manager on it. That was Nigeria. I was going around as a Nigerian. Now, you go around as a Deltan, or you go around as a,
man from the south.
Divisions, that was how the whole division started. Like I said earlier on, people are not going to like it because they think that creation of state has helped in building the nation that we have today. No.
Even amongst the Igbos, somebody says, I'm Delta Igbo.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, look at the way we where we are now was part of Western Nigeria.
Yes.
We went from Western Nigeria to become Bendel. First Midwest, then Bendel. Then from Bendel to now Delta. Now we are still talking of another state.
Okay.
That's a controversial conversation.
Yes.
Which would have had a very separate interview for.
So we all want to be big fish in a small river.
Okay.
That's where the division is coming from.
Now that you have identified where we got it wrong and what is making us not so strong as we used to be back then, what is the way forward? Looking at Nigeria, Nigeria is now 6-4. Do you think there's any chance of us getting it right as we move forward? And what should be done to really restore our lost glory as the giant of Africa?
We have to go back to that master plan that Nigeria made in the 70s between Gowon, head of state Gowon, and Obafemi Awolowo. They did set out a development plan for the nation to industrialize Nigeria, to make Nigeria and go for us to come out of underdevelopment to become a developing state. Where are those plans today? So, to answer your question, we have to go back. But I know why people may not want to go back.
Why?
Because of accountability. Somebody is going to be held responsible or accountable. And if we don't become accountable, there is no way, no matter what plan you put on the table today, it is going to go wrong again. It will go wrong. We will continue to...
we are going to go very, very broad on this conversation from here to there. But then, because of the history you're reeling out, let's talk about the Civil War. Because you talked about how states somehow created division in the country. What was the role of that Civil War? It looks like from that moment, Nigeria became against each other.
Well, the coup. Before you talk about the Civil War, talk about the coups.
Okay.
Coups contributed. There was the first coup, which was not, according to them, those that made the coup, they are telling us today that it was wrong.
Okay.
Yes? So then they did the second one to correct their first mistake. That one too was not right. And that led us into the Civil War that we fought for 3 years. Millions of lives, development stalled for 3 years. But like I said earlier on, we came out of it.
Yeah.
And that was when, like I said, Gowon, Prime Minister, head of state Gowon brought out Awolowo from prison, and they decided to put Nigeria on a developing strata. And they did. All the infrastructures to take Nigeria to a developing nation was all there, and they are still there.
Okay.
So how do let's go back to that.
Go back to the drawing
Yes,
board.
let's go back to that and begin. But like I said, people are going to be
Held accountable.
held accountable.
Do you think Nigeria was way better off under the military rule? Because few Nigerians believe that there was this accountability you're talking about. We had accountability under the military regime, and they feel since 1999 we've got democracy. Democracy has done us no good. Do you toe that line?
Some of my friends would not like what I would say now.
Okay.
There is hardly any difference because what we have and what we have is a dichotomy. It's a partnership between the military
And
and the
Nobody has
politicians.
put it this way.
It's between the military and the politicians. When we have the politicians in government, if you look, you find there are so many military men in that government. When we have the military in government, there are many politicians in it. So I have never really worried too much about that, because that is what we've been having. There is hardly any difference between the military and the...
This is wisdom. I can't even debate, because we even look at it when democracy came to birth in 1999.
Yes.
The first man who took over was ex-military leader or ruler, or talk about Olusegun Obasanjo, General Olusegun Obasanjo. And just after we took a breather from that, we had a former general. It looks like that's the system.
It's like when you talk about the partnership between the military and, unfortunately for us, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but I see it as such. The military remain the senior partner in the whole arrangement.
Senior partner.
Yes. That's why, from what you just said, that's why we've been having military heads of state coming in to be.
And they have a seat where they all discuss about the country. Yeah. The man Olusegun Obasanjo has been talking, really not advice, whether we like it or not, to the presidency right now. And so we just keep on seeing the impact of former military heads of state. We hope Nigeria turns out to be better, really. It looks like when we talk about the Nigerian problem has taken us away from global problems as well. Let's get back to the studio and think about this. It looks like the Nigerian problem of, the country's economic downturn, insecurity, has taken us away from other issues that bedevils the entire world. One of such issues, climate change. Yeah. And I know you have a very particular interest when it comes to that area. Tell us about what even spurred your passion into climate change, and what are your thoughts towards climate change as it is now in Nigeria? I'll have more questions as you continue.
I'm happy you're changing the conversation a little bit, which is very good for me too. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the program about what shaped my life.
Yes.
Those were the things that happened soon after our independence. Okay. And I became like a student of politics. I have always been. And in 1964, Kwame Nkrumah made a statement that the continent of Africa will remain in darkness until the Sahara Desert is breached. Not necessarily building a bridge across the Sahara, but taming the Sahara. The Sahara is the biggest desert in the world, following Gobi in China. There is also another desert in California and Nevada, been tamed. Desert in Israel, the Negev desert, the whole of Israel was built on the deserts. So almost all the deserts in the world were being tamed and something useful made out of them. Okay. So that statement that Kwame Nkrumah made touched me. So when I now finished my studies in the UK and decided to come back to Nigeria, like I mentioned earlier on, I made inquiries. What is it about the Sahara? Since that is stalling the development of the continent of Africa. Everybody said it's a no-go area. It's an impossible place to go. It is this, it's a killer, it's all sorts of things. But fortunately for me, as a very young 10, 11, 12-year-old boy, I did a lot of fishing in Annam, not too far away from here. Okay. And I went on hunting expedition with my uncle then. And I learned the art of conquering fear. In other words, every time you tell me that something is impossible, I try to find out why.
And you crossed the desert multiple times.
That's right, yes. So that was why when I was now coming back to Nigeria, I decided to drive from London.
Oh no.
All the way from Europe. Oh. Across Europe, across the Mediterranean.
How long did that take?
And across the Sahara Desert.
How long did that take? How many days?
2 months.
2 months.
Okay.
And that now, one, I did what people said was impossible. That is crossing the Sahara. Two, it exposed me to the danger that Kwame Nkrumah spoke about in 1964. And so that was how my involvement in environmental issues started. Not just, but as that was going on, I became then the issue long before the climate change matter started. So when that came, I decided to be a part of that climate change debate because I have experienced it practically.
Okay. Uh, Dr. Jibuno, you witnessed Nigeria's independence. How did the journey of independence shape the nation's environmental policies, especially in terms of the use of land and conservation?
Well, there's still a lot of abuse going on, which I have been campaigning on in the last so many years. I have built wall of tree program in Kano, in Dambata area of Kano, to stop the encroachment of the Sahara Desert. I've done it in Katsina area of the country. And Nigeria became a party to the whole climate change issue. I have attended a few of those climate change. Out of the 29 climate change conferences around the world, I have attended 15.
Impressive.
Around the world. So Nigeria is participating. The question you may want to ask is, what have we benefited?
Yes.
What have we learned
Yes.
from all that COP meetings, COP conferences around the world? I would say very little. Very little. But it's a work in progress. One is I'm developing a Desert Warrior initiative that is going to, that is those I will pass on the torch to, because it is a program that will last so many, many years. So yes, Nigeria is in it, and I'm hoping that one of these days we will begin to bring out initiatives that will help contain the kind of environmental catastrophes that we are having all over the world, which will soon get into Nigeria, because we are experiencing some floods already.
Yes.
And some bushfire.
Yeah, the president now has been making many moves to combat climate change issues and the likes. Matter of fact, this one time he appointed his former media aide to help him, push for that. Have you admired his gestures so far? Do you think they are yielding any result? Do you think that over the years, our leaders have yielded any result as regards their battle in terms of preserving the climate?
It's a very difficult question, because I'm in it. I have been in it for 40 years.
Wow.
And if they're doing anything without taking into consideration the things I have written, the things I have done, and the projects that I have carried out in the country on this whole climate change issue, then it's a non-starter for me. Because I think I'm a foremost environmentalist. Like I said, I started it long before this whole debate came up, before it became a topical issue. So I don't know how they want to go about it, but I can tell you that we are heading for some very serious catastrophes in this country if nothing is done quickly to contain the likely fallout that we may have from the climate change that is taking place all over.
Okay, just to talk about some of these, some of these so-called catastrophes that we might suffer if care is not taken, so that the young man watching, the young lady watching, would understand clearly and know that this fight is not just for the warrior Jibuno, but for everyone.
As you know, the climate is warming up. That's what this whole COP meeting is about, to bring down the temperature, so that the whole thing cannot. Because once you have that warming up, you can even feel it here in Asaba.
Yes.
With the way, when it is hot, it's very hot, hotter than it used to be. And when it's raining, it's coming thunderous, in a very thunderous manner, not the way it used to be. So everything is changing, all right? So if and when you have that, all you do is to see how best you can contain it. The sea is rising because of the warming up of the climate. The iceberg is melting and making the sea level to rise. Okay, so whilst the sea level is rising, the development that is taking place in all our cities, especially the low-lying areas, are going down. So if you have the sea looking down on the land, what happens when you have a storm? That is why in some countries today, cities are disappearing. Look at what's happening in America right now. That is what we have to learn from and begin to take measures. Because if you have the land going down and the sea, rivers going up, you are looking for trouble. So the only way then is to bring down the temperature. And that's why we all have to do whatever we can to start looking for fossil fuel reduction and the rest of it, so that we can contain. I've seen it all. I mean, I have done the crossing of the Sahara 4 times.
Okay.
Because of just to raise global awareness, to let the continent of Africa. Let me also tell you, there's hardly any, in almost all the continents of the world, there is desert. It's only the Sahara that is not tamed, that is still active. So you can imagine the situation where temperature is rising, the Sahara is encroaching, the sea level is going up.
Maybe it's not tamed. Just explain a little bit further.
Like what I said at the beginning, what Kwame Nkrumah made in his statement, you have to take development to the deserts.
Okay, begin to build infrastructure.
Oh, yeah, you have to take development there that's being done in China right now with Gobi. Gobi is just half the size of the Sahara. And they have if you go take a study, see what they are doing with Gobi. They are even turning it into agriculture.
You wouldn't mind the Sahara to have a city in it. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, can you reflect on the Nigeria you saw during your first Sahara crossing in 1966 compared to the Nigeria you're seeing today? And what should we do to address these environmental issues you've talked about? You said you've written a lot about it, and our leaders seem not to be paying attention to what you've written so far. Talk to us. Reflect on your first Sahara crossing in 1966, how Nigeria was, how Nigeria is now, and what we should do to protect our environment.
Nigeria, I saw, was heading towards a developing nation.
Okay.
We are still underdeveloped.
Underdeveloped.
Yes, we are still underdeveloped. So how do we get out of that underdevelopment to a developing nation? That plan was made in the 70s. All the way down to early 80s. Why can't we go back to that? It's there. It's there because I'm sorry, I'd have to be a bit, I don't know.
You're an elder statesman, sir.
When, for instance, I'll give you a typical example, because I write every week. I'm a columnist.
On the Sun newspaper?
Not Sun and now Pointer.
Okay, that's good. Charity should
Even recently, Observer.
Okay.
All right? I write every week.
Okay.
I have written 5 books. Most of them on this issue. If we must get our act right, we have, because where is the plan? Do we have a middle or long-term plan for the country, for people to see? When the last former president made statement that he was going to create 10 million jobs in a year or something like that, I wrote in one of my columns, I said, Mr. President, let's see your plan. I wrote, it's there. Can we see the plan you have made on how to bring
10 million jobs.
10 million, how to create 10 million jobs and take people out of poverty.
Okay. No.
So if and when they come and make statements like this, please, we must say to them, let's see your plan.
Now,
because if you see the plan, then you can, other experts can come in and contribute. You just mentioned about somebody being appointed.
Yes.
Let's see the plan he's going to come up with on how to address the issue of climate change. Because that is the next issue. That is where the whole world is worried about today.
Okay, Dr. JIBUNOH, if you were to advise the president on what to do on issues like climate change, desertification, what would be your advice? What should the federal government do to protect our country and the environment?
We are a signatory to the climate change issue. We are a signatory. Nigeria, I think Buhari, during his era, signed us into becoming part of the global change matter. The plan is there. So we need to align. There is a climate change department in the Ministry of Environment in Abuja. So it's not Newton JIBUNOH saying it. They know, they have it. So why don't we just comply, go with what the global community have set aside for every country to to
Is there
adjust
anything
to?
the people, citizens, Nigerians can do
Oh,
to
yes.
protect the environment?
Beautiful question. Very nice question. Yeah, I mean, I'm, for instance, championing the tree planting operations all over the country. I have done it in Kano. I've received so many awards for what I did in Kano. I did it in Lagos. Actually, it was what I did in Lagos. And Governor Fashola honored me in Lagos and invited our then Governor Uduagha to the event. And Governor Uduagha made a statement which received a lot of applause. And that is, considering that I have done so much in the north, in Abuja, in Lagos, that I was yet to do something in my home state.
Charity must begin at home.
And that was how the Mandela Garden project came to be.
Wow.
All right, so it is part of that, call it adaptation policy, contained in the climate change issue that the whole world is practicing today. We need to see how we can, from a local level, bring down our temperature. One of the easiest and cleanest way is to surround yourself with as much green as you can.
Okay.
Surround yourself, because if you go around, you come to the park, you've been there,
Yes, I
you
have.
see
Yeah,
how different it is. Surround yourself. It doesn't take much to plant a tree. I have introduced asking, people celebrating their birthdays with trees. If you're going to turn 30, and I know you are under that, plant 30 trees. And you will see the difference it will make to your environment, to the air you breathe, to the water you drink.
Yes.
The air we breathe, talking about environment, it's also health. If your environment is not right, it affects your health. And why? Because the food you eat, the water you drink, and the air you breathe. The food you eat, you can see before you eat. The water you drink, the air you breathe, you don't see it. And it's that poisonous air is filtered, can be filtered by trees. So that when you now get the air, it is clean. But when it is not filtered, look at all the fumes, look at all the toxic issues, look at all the, even the rainfall today, they have all become acidic.
Okay.
So the only way you can do that. So I'm campaigning on that.
Okay.
I have done it. I'm doing it in Asaba. I've done it in my hometown, and I'm carrying it around the whole place.
Sure.
Please
Okay.
plant your trees.
All right, let me take you to desertification.
Yeah.
How would you describe the relationship between desert encroachment and poverty, migration and conflict in Nigeria and West Africa?
Another beautiful question, because when I started my campaign, I made it clear that if the frontline states, 11 states in Nigeria, do not drive back the desert the way it was encroaching, that majority of the henchmen, majority of the Fulani nomadic henchmen will migrate to the south in search of. I even said then that and it might bring conflicts, possibly war. I said it. I wrote about it. My documents are there. I even went. Fashola became governor. He invited me to ESCO, and that was how they started partnering with me. Okay. The issue then is that Lake Chad went. Most of the water bodies along the fringes of the desert went. And if a Fulani man, a nomadic Fulani man, you think they are poor, they are not that poor, but they are poor now, owning 1,000 animal heads. He wakes up in the morning, no place to graze his cattle, no water body to feed. What do you expect him to do? 1,000 1,000 animal heads will die. So they start to migrate. And that's what we're in. Today there are colonies all over, even here in Delta.
Yeah.
They are all over the place. Because we've done nothing to contain. The average nomadic Fulani man do not want to be urbanized. They can't be urbanized because of their nomadic lifestyle.
Nature.
But today, they are all over the urban centers. And that's where the conflict is coming.
Dr. Jibuno, this has been very wonderful. Enjoyed every moment, but time is just not friendly anymore because you have been very interesting. And that's what time does, right? Fight with you when you're having a great time. However, before we say goodbye to you, one passion of yours is against land grabbing. Just in a brief sentence, send a strong message as regards to that area. Speak to it.
Well, land grabbing is, especially here in Anyama State, is becoming a very dangerous occupation. People are trading with land. And once you trade with land, you abuse the land. And that goes back to what I said earlier on about managing land for posterity. And I hear that there are some powerful cartels that are responsible for this. And I hope, especially with a program like this, they will get to hear me, because I've been writing about it. They will get to know that what they are doing is selling off the future of our coming generation. They're selling off because for us, like in my community, we call it Anioma. Anioma means the beautiful land, translated into English. Beautiful land must be handled with care, must be treated with respect. Not when you start trading, abusing it, building all sorts of nonsense that you don't have any plan for, just to make money. You abuse the land. The same land that is giving us everything, the same land that will go back to when we die. Why must you abuse it?
Dr. Jibuno, you're a man of many passion, and we really have enjoyed every second, every split second, having this conversation with you. Your position, the things you've achieved are quite enormous, and we've gone through them when we started this particular conversation, and we'll say that thank you so much for being part of this program. Thank you so much for sharing your life with the country. Thank you so much for leaving the United Kingdom to come back to Nigeria and impact in your great nation. I hope that we can learn from you and the younger generation can pick up and do some of the great things that you have been doing and that you have done. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your good words and for giving us
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Nigeria is 64. Happy Independence, Nigeria. The show continues. When we come back, we'll look at the papers and then we'll say our goodbye. Stay with us.